These two work together. Yo, what's going on? It's someone that's no one, and welcome to today's report. Today's report is coming from a hood off Earwood. When this happened was 2002. The drugs used: nutmeg and mushrooms. Gender, male. Weight, 155 pounds. Dose, 1.5 or 1.5 nuts of nutmeg and 1 gram of mushrooms. Where this happened? At his wife's sister's, Gwen's house, during a party. So this is a really interesting combo, not one you really hear about too often or really at all, so I think you guys are really going to like it. It does provide some very special effects. So without further ado, let's dive right into it. It was New Year's Eve with a full moon and time for another mind challenge. My wife, myself, and her sister, who we will call Gwen, had planned a party for that night. My wife, who I will call Sarah, started the party early by taking about 1.5 large nutmeg at around 9 a.m. This way her trip would be over sooner for her so she could work the next day. We like to stick with just chewing up the whole nut. The taste is nasty, but worth it. I took my dose of the same amount at around 3 p.m. The idea was to time the nutmeg with the mushrooms so that the peaks would overlap. After several hours of making food for the party, we left for her sister's house, which was luckily only about 4 blocks away. We arrived at around 7 p.m., and we were enjoying the subtle effects. 2 people would be showing up soon that were not hip to the idea of any of us tripping, so that made it even more challenging. Gwen and I had agreed to each go to the bathroom to take our pre-measured dose of mushrooms of 1 gram right after dinner. So it would make the interesting combination of Gwen on mushrooms, Sarah on nutmeg, and me on both. By the time dinner was done, it was 9 p.m. Perfect timing. I glanced at Gwen and went to take my dose. I then realized that I was feeling really good. I thought about how I was handling myself in front of 2 non-trippers. My sense of time had been altered. I could not remember what in the world we were talking about, and only about 3 minutes had passed. So far, it seemed as though they thought I was just drunk. I had a hard time getting all the crumbs out of the bag. It felt good just to stand there in the bathroom and feel the pieces. Once I dosed, I went back out to talk to people. Gwen went to take her dose. I sat down and started to talk to her with her husband. The shrooms seemed to kick in very quickly. Her husband's arms were making tracers as he used them to explain a story. The tracers had cool fine webs attached to them. I was understanding everything said around me, but every time I tried to talk, I would come out all slurred and would not make sense. Sarah noticed that I was dragging my words out and saying things with a long draw. This was such an incredible feeling. I noticed Gwen laughing really loud and hysterically. Her husband went to bed, and things started to get even more intense. I was having no negative feelings from the shrooms. The nutmeg had absorbed all the negative of the shrooms, and the shrooms absorbed all the negative of the nutmeg. I decided that I was just going to sit in the same chair all night and enjoy the feeling. Every time I got up to go to the bathroom or to get another beer, the talking that I previously understood would totally morph into blah blah blah, drew, dlap, dlap. Every time it was a little more distorted. If I looked directly at someone, I could tell what was being said. As soon as I turned away, the distortion would start again. At first, I thought Sarah and Gwen were playing with me and making their voices like that on purpose. I then realized that everyone's voice was doing it. That was just one of the coolest things I have ever heard. There were several visual mindfucks. There were things like me thinking I saw a cat all curled up on the edge of the couch, and with a closer look, turning into a shadow. Colors would change from dark to light, and different shades would appear on various locations. I was having so much fun, I almost forgot about midnight. We were 7 minutes away. Gwen, Sarah, and I convinced everyone to go outside. The cold did not really bother me. Gunfire and firecrackers filled the air. There were a lot of happy people all around. The blasting noises echoed and left sound like tracers. I could not tell what would have normally been an echo. Someone a block away set off the really pretty skylit kind. I just happened to look at the right time. The whole sky was brightened by the full moon. Things were still increasing for the nutmeg. This was a little frightening, but I really enjoyed embracing the new year in this frame of mind. Sarah kept on opening the car door and honking the horn, which also left cool echoes. Usually this sort of thing would make me paranoid as hell. I just stood there in the cold and laughed. Once we went inside, things happened even faster. I finally rested on the floor as I was listening to fish. The music was talking to me from different angles, and this was too interesting to leave. So I stayed on the floor for about an hour, contemplating the melodies and tones. When I fell asleep, my dreams were realistic and about the night. I dreamed I was still awake at the party. It was hard to tell in the morning what I dreamed and what really happened. It is now the next day, and I'm still feeling the nutmeg and having mild flash visuals of colors changing and shadows. The nutmeg had an effect on the way the mushrooms lasted. When I first woke up, I still felt the effects for around 15 minutes. These two drugs go very well together and can be very rewarding if done right. A larger dose of shrooms would have worked, but this was a cautious start. I would recommend to anyone wanting to combine these to try each alone first to get used to the power of each. The self-practical joke-playing nature of the nutmeg, when combined with the shrooms, produces some very interesting what is real questions. Alright, so this was a very interesting report. Pretty rare combo, and I haven't really heard anyone doing it before, and honestly, it doesn't sound too bad. Like, it sounds like they would go together, but they're both natural and whatnot. But firstly, let's get some basic info down. Now, I'm expecting most of you to know a fair amount about psilocybin mushrooms, as it is one of the most widely used psychedelics today. It's a trip that lasts 5 to 7 hours and is generally more healing and naturally based in its nature. Nutmeg is something I expect some of you to know, or at least heard of, or seen in the store, or know about if you cook. But nutmeg is a seed. When consumed enough, can cause delirious effects. Not normally visual, but very sedating, along with negative effects like dehydration and dizziness. And it can last generally 1 to 3 days. Now, about this report, since Ehud ate about 1.5 seeds, I would guess that would equal anywhere between 10 to 20 grams. And with that dose, it really does depend on the person, but I wouldn't doubt alone it would provide feelings of being mildly stoned or drunk, with some light effects on your visual take of the environment. With the mushrooms, it seemed like the doors were opening to more of that core nutmeg visual. For example, such as the cat turning out to be a shadow. I do feel that the mushrooms, though, did end up taking the lead ahead of the nutmeg in the trip. It was like the nutmeg was in the background somewhat, supporting the mushroom trip. But looking at the doses, it is most likely they potentiated each other in some way and helped reveal more of each other. I also like to note about how recreational and positive it seemed to be. We do have to keep in mind he did drink during this experience, which may have helped induce that. And this is where I want to bring up our comparison trip, which is going to be Not at All Expected by Judge Buster, who took 5 tablespoons of nutmeg. And if you want to see that, there will be a link in the description. Looking at Judge Buster's trip, we can see various moments where the nutmeg put him in a better mood and made him positively reflect on factors in his life. Mushrooms somewhat already promote this feeling, so I think it was definitely enhanced further, and it seemed to put Ehud in a really good mood for the new year. There's just similarities to be found, and I think nutmeg may have some potential, and I say this not as a huge fan of taking deliriants, but this combo does sound very interesting and may have potential for further exploration.